Hi, I'm David Martinez, 28 years old, and I'm standing behind the counter of a burger palace in Riverside, California, wearing the same uniform my brother Ryan has been making fun of for 7 years. Just 3 hours ago, he posted on his Instagram story a photo of me flipping burgers with the caption, "Some people never grow up," followed by laughing emojis. What Ryan doesn't know is that I'm not just working at this burger palace. I own this one, along with 22 others across 3 counties, generating over $4 million in annual revenue. In about 2 hours, Ryan and his girlfriend Ashley will walk through that door to grab dinner before their movie date, and everything is about to change. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Growing up in the Oak Hills neighborhood of Riverside, our family lived by one simple rule: education equals respectability, and respectability equals success. My father Carlos worked construction, coming home every evening with calloused hands and concrete dust on his clothes, always reminding us that physical labor was what you did when you didn't have better options. My mother Linda, a school administrator, reinforced this message daily, pointing to Ryan's academic achievements as the roadmap we should all follow. Their house, a modest 3-bedroom ranch with a carefully maintained front yard, and my mother's prize-winning rose garden, was filled with Ryan's certificates, honor roll listings, and college acceptance letters displayed like religious artifacts on every available wall space. Ryan was everything my parents dreamed of in a son. 3 years older than me, he sailed through high school with a 4.2 GPA, served as student body president, and earned a full scholarship to UC Davis, where he studied business administration. During family dinners, conversations revolved around Ryan's internships, his networking opportunities, and his bright corporate future. My parents would beam with pride as he discussed case studies and business theories, nodding along as if they understood every word of his academic jargon. Ryan loved being the center of attention, and truth be told, he was genuinely intelligent and hardworking. The problem wasn't that he was successful. It was that his success somehow made everyone else's path seem inferior by comparison. My relationship with achievement started differently. While Ryan excelled in traditional academics, I was drawn to understanding how things actually worked in the real world. During high school, I took a part-time job at the local burger palace, not because I needed the money, but because I was curious about business operations. I watched how managers handled inventory, studied customer flow patterns during peak hours, and paid attention to profit margins on different menu items. My parents tolerated this job as long as my grades remained decent, but they made it clear they viewed it as a temporary distraction from my real education. Ryan would pick me up after my shifts, windows down, music loud, making sure his friends saw him rescuing his little brother from his embarrassing fast food job. The first time I tried to share my fascination with the restaurant business, I was 17, and had just learned about franchise models during a slow evening shift. I came home excited to tell my family about how individual owners could operate under a larger corporate umbrella, maintaining independence while benefiting from established branding and systems. Ryan was home from college for spring break, and the family was gathered in the living room watching his presentation about his latest business project. I waited for a break in the conversation and started explaining what I'd learned about franchising. My mother smiled politely and said, "That's nice, Mijo, but you should focus on your real studies." Ryan laughed and added, "David thinks flipping burgers is going to teach him about business. Wait until you take actual business classes in college." The conversation immediately returned to Ryan's academic achievements, and I felt that familiar sting of being dismissed. Throughout my senior year of high school, this pattern continued. I would come home with insights about customer service, inventory management, or staff scheduling, only to have my observations treated as amusing anecdotes from my little job. Meanwhile, Ryan's every comment about economic theory or marketing principles was received as profound wisdom. The message was clear. Real business knowledge came from textbooks and classrooms, not from actually working in a business. This dismissive attitude planted a seed of determination in me that would eventually grow into something my family never saw coming. When I graduated high school, the expectation was that I would follow Ryan's path to a 4-year university, earn a business degree, and transition into a respectable corporate position. I did enroll at UC Riverside, partially to appease my parents, and partially because I genuinely wanted to understand the theoretical side of business operations. However, I also kept my job at Burger Palace, working 25 hours per week while taking a full course load. My parents weren't thrilled about this arrangement, constantly reminding me that my studies should be my priority and that the restaurant job was preventing me from fully committing to my education. During my freshman year, something interesting happened. My business professors were teaching concepts that I was witnessing firsthand at work: supply chain management, customer retention strategies, profit optimization, and employee motivation. The difference was that while my classmates were learning these ideas in theory, I was seeing them implemented daily. I began to understand that the academic world and the business world weren't separate entities but complementary perspectives on the same fundamental principles. This realization sparked an idea that would change everything. What if I could combine theoretical knowledge with practical experience to build something significant? My sophomore year brought the opportunity that would set my future in motion. The owner of our Burger Palace location, Mr. Peterson, was nearing retirement and looking to sell his franchise. During one of our closing shifts, he mentioned that he was having trouble finding a qualified buyer who understood both the operational demands and the financial requirements of running a successful location. Most potential buyers either had restaurant experience but lacked capital, or had money but no understanding of the day-to-day realities of food service. As he talked about his dilemma, I realized I might have a unique solution to offer. I had been saving money for my job since high school, living at home and keeping my expenses minimal. Additionally, I had received a modest inheritance from my grandmother, which I had invested conservatively rather than spending on typical college luxuries. Combined with what I could access through small business loans, I calculated that I might have enough capital to make a serious offer on the franchise. The idea seemed audacious, a 20-year-old college student buying an established restaurant, but the numbers made sense, and my understanding of the operation gave me confidence that I could make it successful. The conversation with Mr. Peterson that changed my life happened on a quiet Tuesday evening in March. We were cleaning the grill area after closing when I finally worked up the courage to ask if he would consider selling to me. His initial reaction was surprise, followed by skepticism about my age and experience. However, as we talked through the financial details, and I demonstrated my understanding of the business operations, his skepticism transformed into cautious interest. He agreed to let me submit a formal proposal, though he warned me that the franchise approval process would be rigorous and that corporate headquarters might be hesitant to approve such a young owner. The next 3 months were a whirlwind of business plan development, financial documentation, and meetings with franchise representatives. I maintained my college schedule and work shifts while simultaneously preparing loan applications and market analysis reports. The process was exhausting, but it was also exhilarating in a way that my academic coursework had never been. I was applying everything I was learning in school to a real-world situation with genuine stakes and tangible outcomes. My family remained completely unaware of these developments. When I mentioned that I was working on a special project for Mr. Peterson, they assumed it was some kind of management training or additional responsibility within my existing job. Ryan, who was completing his MBA at the time, made several comments about how restaurant experience might look good on my resume when I eventually applied for real business positions. The irony of his advice wasn't lost on me, but I kept my plans private, partly because I wasn't sure they would materialize, and partly because I wanted to avoid another round of dismissive comments about my fast food fantasies. The day I received approval for the franchise purchase was one of the most surreal moments of my life. I was sitting in my dorm room, supposedly studying for a macroeconomics exam, when the call came through. Mr. Peterson's excited voice informed me that corporate headquarters had approved the transfer, the loan had been finalized, and I was officially going to become the owner of Burger Palace location 247 on Magnolia Avenue. At 20 years old, I was about to own my first business, generating approximately $180,000 in annual profit, and my family had no idea. The transition period was carefully orchestrated to maintain the appearance of normalcy. Mr. Peterson and I agreed that he would stay on for 6 months to help with the ownership transfer, while I completed my sophomore year. To my coworkers and family, it appeared that I was simply being promoted to assistant manager, which explained my increased hours and involvement in administrative tasks. Ryan found this development amusing, joking that I was becoming quite the big shot in the burger world, and suggesting that management experience would look good when I eventually moved on to serious employment. During those 6 months, I learned more about business operations than any classroom could have taught me. I was responsible for everything from staff scheduling and inventory orders to profit and loss analysis and customer satisfaction metrics. The theoretical concepts from my business classes suddenly had practical applications and immediate consequences. When I made a scheduling error, it affected customer service and employee morale. When I optimized inventory ordering, it directly impacted our profit margins. Every decision had real-world implications that taught me lessons no textbook could provide. By the end of my sophomore year, I was the sole owner of a profitable restaurant business while maintaining a 3.8 GPA in my business program. The cognitive dissonance of this situation was striking. During the day, I sat in lectures about entrepreneurship and small business management, while in the evenings, I was actually implementing those concepts as a business owner. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My professors praised my theoretical understanding and case study analyses, never knowing that I was applying their teachings in real time at my own establishment. The financial success of my first location exceeded my projections. Within 8 months of taking full ownership, I had increased revenue by 15% through operational improvements and customer service enhancements. The profit margins allowed me to accelerate my loan payments while building capital for potential expansion. More importantly, the experience gave me confidence that my unconventional path was not only viable but potentially more valuable than traditional corporate employment. My family's perception of my situation remained unchanged. They saw me as a college student with a part-time job that was taking longer to outgrow than they would prefer. During family dinners, Ryan would update everyone on his MBA program and internship prospects while I quietly listened, knowing that my actual business experience was far more comprehensive than his theoretical education. The temptation to reveal my success was strong, but I had learned to protect my achievements from their dismissive attitudes. The decision to expand came during my junior year when another franchise opportunity became available in nearby San Bernardino. The owner was relocating out of state and needed to sell quickly, creating an opportunity for a below-market purchase price. By this time, my first location was generating sufficient profit to support expansion financing, and my track record with corporate headquarters made the approval process smoother. The prospect of owning multiple locations transformed my business from a single successful venture into the foundation of a growing enterprise. The challenges of managing multiple locations while maintaining my college schedule pushed me to develop systems and delegation skills that most business students never encounter. I hired experienced managers for day-to-day operations while maintaining oversight of financial performance and strategic decisions. This arrangement allowed me to continue my education while building a multi-location business, though it required careful time management and constant attention to operational details. By my senior year, I owned 4 Burger Palace locations and was generating more annual income than most MBA graduates could expect in their first corporate positions. My academic performance remained strong, partly because my practical experience made business concepts easier to understand and apply. I was living proof that alternative paths to business success could be both faster and more profitable than traditional corporate careers. Yet my family continued to view my restaurant involvement as a prolonged phase rather than a legitimate career choice. The expansion continued throughout my senior year and beyond. Each successful location provided capital and credibility for additional acquisitions, creating a growth trajectory that exceeded my original projections. By the time I graduated with my business degree, I owned 8 franchise locations and was recognized by corporate headquarters as one of their youngest and most successful multi-unit operators. The irony was not lost on me that I was receiving awards for business achievement while my family worried about when I would finally get a real job. Ryan's graduation from his MBA program was celebrated with a family party that highlighted the ongoing disparity in how our achievements were perceived. His job offer from a regional tech company, starting at $65,000 annually, was treated as a major milestone worthy of celebration and pride. Meanwhile, my business was generating over 4 times that amount in annual profit, Yet my family continued to view my restaurant ownership as an extended college job rather than a legitimate career accomplishment. The decision to keep my success private had originally been driven by self-protection against dismissive attitudes, but it had evolved into something more complex. My achievements had become a source of quiet confidence and independence that didn't require external validation. While Ryan saw approval and recognition for his corporate success, I had built something substantial without needing anyone's permission or praise. This independence was empowering, but it also created a growing distance between my actual life and my family's perception of my circumstances. The years following college brought continued expansion and success. By age 25, I owned 15 locations and had established myself as a significant player in the regional franchise market. Corporate headquarters invited me to speak at franchise conferences about multi-unit growth strategies, and industry publications featured articles about my unconventional path to business ownership. My success was becoming recognized within professional circles, even as my family remained oblivious to my achievements. The emotional cost of maintaining this separation was significant, but manageable. I had developed friendships within the franchise community and business networks that provided professional recognition and support. My college friend Tyler Jackson, who knew the truth about my business success, often marveled at my ability to compartmentalize my professional achievements from my family relationships. He understood that my silence wasn't driven by shame about my work, but by protection against the dismissive attitudes that had shaped my childhood experiences. The contrast between my public and private personas became most apparent during family gatherings. Ryan would discuss his corporate promotions and salary increases with obvious pride, while I listened quietly, knowing that my quarterly franchise earnings exceeded his annual income. These moments weren't driven by competitiveness or resentment, but by a recognition that our family's definition of success was too narrow to accommodate my unconventional achievements. As I approached my 28th birthday, my business portfolio had grown to 23 locations across 3 counties, making me one of the largest Burger Palace franchise operators in Southern California. The success had enabled me to purchase real estate, invest in other ventures, and build substantial financial security. Yet when I visited my parents for Sunday dinners, I was still treated as their son who never quite found his direction after college and was still working in restaurants instead of pursuing a proper career. The routine of these family interactions had become predictable and somewhat comfortable in its familiarity. Ryan would arrive with updates about his corporate achievements, my parents would express pride in his success and concern about my lack of progress, and I would deflect questions about my future plans while maintaining the fiction that I was simply a restaurant employee, rather than a business owner. This dynamic had persisted for so long that changing it seemed almost impossible, even as the gap between perception and reality continued to widen. The weekend that would finally shatter this carefully maintained illusion began like any other. Ryan had recently received another promotion at his tech company and wanted to celebrate with a dinner out before catching a movie with his girlfriend Ashley. They chose the Burger Palace on Magnolia Avenue, partly because it was convenient to the movie theater, and partly because Ryan enjoyed the irony of eating at the type of establishment where his little brother still worked despite having a college degree. As they walked through the door that Friday evening, neither of them had any idea that they were entering my flagship location, the first business I had ever owned, and the foundation of an empire that had grown far beyond anything our family could have imagined. The Martinez family hierarchy had been established long before I understood what it meant to be relegated to second place. In our household, success was measured by degrees earned, salaries commanded, and the respect that came from wearing a suit to work instead of a uniform. My father Carlos would come home from construction sites, exhausted but proud, always emphasizing that his physical labor was funding our education so we wouldn't have to follow in his footsteps. He spoke about Ryan's achievements with a reverence typically reserved for religious discussions, as if my brother's academic success validated every sacrifice our parents had made. My mother Linda wielded her position as a school administrator like a badge of honor, constantly reinforcing the importance of formal education and traditional career paths. She had worked her way up from a teacher's aide to assistant principal over 15 years, and she viewed this progression as proof that perseverance within established systems led to respectability and security. Her office walls were covered with certificates from educational conferences and professional development workshops, and she expected her sons to display similar credentials as evidence of their worthiness. Ryan had embraced this system completely, understanding instinctively that academic achievement translated to parental approval and family status. From elementary school through graduate school, he had performed the role of the perfect son with remarkable consistency. His bedroom was a shrine to accomplishment, filled with trophies from academic competitions, certificates of merit, and photographs from various award ceremonies. My parents attended every recognition event, beaming with pride as teachers and administrators praised Ryan's dedication and potential. The family gatherings during Ryan's college years were masterclasses in reinforcing established hierarchies. He would arrive home for holidays loaded with stories about internships, networking events, and professors who had singled him out for special opportunities. My parents hung on every word, asking detailed questions about his coursework, his career prospects, and his connections within the business world. These conversations could last for hours, with my mother taking notes about companies Ryan mentioned, and my father nodding approvingly at salary figures and benefit packages. During these same gatherings, my presence was acknowledged but not celebrated. Questions about my restaurant job were perfunctory and quickly redirected to more interesting topics like Ryan's latest achievement or future plans. When I attempted to contribute to business discussions, my comments were received with polite smiles and subtle dismissals. My mother would pat my hand and say things like, "That's nice that you're learning about customer service," before turning her attention back to Ryan's insights about market trends and corporate strategy. The language my family used to describe our respective situations revealed everything about their expectations and assumptions. Ryan was building his career, establishing himself professionally, and making important connections. I was still working at that restaurant, figuring things out, and taking some time to find my direction. These phrases weren't intentionally cruel, but they created a clear distinction between legitimate professional development and temporary employment that served no greater purpose. Extended family gatherings amplified these dynamics exponentially. During holidays and celebrations, my aunts and uncles would gather around Ryan to hear about his latest accomplishments, treating him like a celebrity whose success reflected positively on the entire family. They would ask detailed questions about his job responsibilities, his company's growth prospects, and his plans for advancement. These conversations reinforced the message that corporate employment was the only path worthy of serious discussion or genuine interest. Meanwhile, conversations about my work were brief and slightly embarrassed. Family members would ask how things were going at the restaurant, with the same tone they might use to inquire about a temporary health problem or financial difficulty. The underlying assumption was that my current situation was something to be endured rather than celebrated, a stepping stone to eventual respectability rather than a legitimate career choice. When I mentioned enjoying the work or learning valuable skills, these comments were received as evidence of low expectations rather than genuine satisfaction. The most painful aspect of this dynamic wasn't the dismissal itself, but the absolute certainty with which my family members expressed their opinions. They weren't considering the possibility that alternative paths to success might exist. They had completely ruled out any scenario in which restaurant work could lead to meaningful achievement. This closed-mindedness created an environment where discussing my actual accomplishments felt impossible, not because I was ashamed of my work, but because I knew my success wouldn't be recognized or understood. My parents' friends and neighbors reinforced these attitudes through their own assumptions and comments. During community events and social gatherings, conversations about children inevitably focused on educational achievements and career milestones. My mother would light up when discussing Ryan's MBA program and job prospects, but her demeanor would shift noticeably when the conversation turned to my situation. She would offer vague explanations about my exploring different opportunities or gaining work experience, before quickly changing the subject. The neighborhood barbecues and block parties became particularly challenging as Ryan's career advanced, and my apparent lack of progress became more noticeable. Other parents would share updates about their children's promotions, graduate degrees, and professional accomplishments, creating an informal competition where family status was determined by offspring success. My mother participated enthusiastically when discussing Ryan, but became defensive and evasive when neighbors inquired about my future plans. These social dynamics extended to our extended family network, where cousins and relatives were constantly compared and ranked according to their educational achievements and career trajectories. Ryan occupied the top tier of this informal hierarchy, frequently cited as an example for younger family members to emulate. His success stories were repeated at family gatherings with increasing embellishment, transforming routine work accomplishments into legendary achievements that demonstrated superior character and intelligence. The church community where my parents were active members provided another venue for these status displays. During coffee hour after Sunday services, conversations naturally turned to family updates and personal achievements. My mother would spend considerable time detailing Ryan's latest accomplishments to anyone willing to listen, but she would deflect questions about my situation with embarrassed smiles and promises that I was still figuring things out, but would eventually find my way. The financial implications of these attitudes became increasingly apparent as Ryan's career progressed, and our family's expectations for his future grew more ambitious. My parents began planning for Ryan's wedding expenses, discussing potential contributions to his future home purchase, and considering ways to support his career advancement through networking and connections. These conversations occurred openly, as if financial investment in Ryan's success was an obvious and necessary family priority. In contrast, discussions about my financial situation were characterized by concern and disappointment rather than investment and support. My parents worried about my ability to support myself long-term, questioned whether my restaurant income could sustain an independent lifestyle, and frequently suggested that I should consider returning to school for additional training or certification. The possibility that I might already be financially successful was never considered, because it didn't fit their understanding of how success was achieved. The dating sphere provided another arena where these family dynamics played out with uncomfortable clarity. When Ryan brought girlfriends home, they were welcomed warmly and treated as potential family members whose opinions mattered and whose comfort was important. Conversations with Ryan's girlfriends focused on getting to know them as individuals, understanding their backgrounds and aspirations, and making them feel valued and accepted. When I brought dates to family events, the interactions were polite but noticeably different. My girlfriends were treated kindly but not with the same level of interest or investment that Ryan's relationships received. The underlying assumption seemed to be that my relationships were temporary distractions rather than serious partnerships worthy of significant family attention. This difference in treatment wasn't lost on the women I dated, several of whom commented on the obvious disparity in how my family viewed our respective futures. The career advice offered to Ryan versus the suggestions given to me revealed the depth of these different expectations. Ryan received encouragement to pursue leadership opportunities, take calculated risks, and position himself for maximum advancement within his chosen field. Family members shared connections, offered networking introductions, and provided guidance about strategic career moves that could accelerate his professional development. The advice directed toward me focused on stability, safety, and eventually transitioning to more respectable employment. Family members suggested that I should consider pursuing additional education, applying for government positions with good benefits, or finding entry-level opportunities in established corporations where I could work my way up properly. The underlying message was that my current path led nowhere, and that significant course correction was necessary to achieve any meaningful success. The first memory I have of being treated differently from Ryan occurred when I was 9 years old and had spent weeks working on a school science project about small business economics. I had chosen to study the corner grocery store in our neighborhood, interviewing the owner about his daily operations, profit margins, and customer relationships. The project fascinated me because it revealed the complexity hidden behind what appeared to be a simple retail operation. I learned about inventory management, supplier relationships, and the delicate balance between competitive pricing and profitable margins. My presentation day arrived with tremendous excitement. I had prepared charts showing the store's weekly sales patterns, graphs illustrating seasonal fluctuations in different product categories, and a detailed analysis of how the owner's business decisions affected his bottom line. The teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, was impressed with the depth of my research and the sophistication of my analysis. She awarded me first place in the class competition and recommended my project for the district-wide science fair. I rushed home that afternoon bursting with pride and eager to share my achievement with my family. Ryan was home from middle school, working on his own homework at the dining room table, surrounded by advanced mathematics textbooks and honor society certificates. I burst through the front door waving my blue ribbon and shouting about my victory, expecting the same enthusiasm that typically greeted Ryan's academic successes. My parents looked up from helping Ryan with his algebra homework, smiled politely, and offered brief congratulations before immediately returning their attention to his more challenging mathematical concepts. My mother patted my head and said she was proud of my hard work, but her focus remained on explaining advanced equations to Ryan. My father glanced at my ribbon and nodded approvingly, but he was more interested in Ryan's potential for accelerated mathematics placement. The contrast in attention was stark and immediate. When Ryan brought home academic achievements, family activities stopped while everyone celebrated his success. Dinner conversations revolved around his accomplishments, phone calls were made to relatives sharing the good news, and special treats were purchased to commemorate the occasion. My science fair victory received acknowledgement but not celebration, recognition but not enthusiasm. This pattern repeated itself throughout elementary school with increasing clarity. During 4th grade, I won a citywide essay contest about community heroes, writing about local business owners who created jobs and supported neighborhood development. The prize included a $50 savings bond and recognition at a city council meeting. My parents attended the ceremony but spent most of the evening discussing Ryan's acceptance into the Gifted and Talented program, which had been announced the same week. The following year brought another telling incident when I was selected for the school's Junior Entrepreneur Program, a special initiative that allowed 5th graders to run mock businesses and learn basic accounting principles. I chose to operate a small concession stand during school events, carefully tracking expenses, revenue, and profit margins. The program culminated in a presentation to local business leaders, where I demonstrated my understanding of cost analysis, customer satisfaction metrics, and growth projections. My presentation earned praise from the business community representatives and recognition from the school administration. The local newspaper even included a small article about the program participants, featuring a photograph of me explaining my concession stand operation to interested adults. I brought the newspaper clipping home expecting excitement and pride from my family, but the timing coincided with Ryan's selection for a regional academic competition that would take him to the state capitol. The newspaper article was placed on the refrigerator alongside dozens of Ryan's achievements, but it occupied a corner position rather than the prominent central placement reserved for his more significant accomplishments. Family dinner conversation that evening focused on logistics for Ryan's upcoming competition trip, with my entrepreneurship recognition serving as a brief footnote to more important family business. Middle school brought expanded opportunities for me to demonstrate business aptitude and interest, but it also coincided with Ryan's high school career taking off in spectacular fashion. While I was learning about basic economics and participating in junior achievement programs, Ryan was collecting academic honors, leadership positions, and college recruitment letters. The disparity in family attention and excitement became more pronounced as his achievements grew more impressive, and mine remained at an elementary level. During 7th grade, I organized a fundraising campaign for new playground equipment, coordinating with parent volunteers, local businesses, and school administrators to develop a comprehensive fundraising strategy. The campaign exceeded its goals by 30%, raising enough money not only for the requested equipment, but for additional improvements to the school's outdoor facilities. My organizational skills and business acumen impressed teachers and parents, leading to invitations to participate in similar projects throughout the community. However, that same semester marked Ryan's selection as student body president, his acceptance into multiple honor societies, and his recognition as a National Merit Scholar semifinalist. Family celebrations focused on these major milestones, with my fundraising success acknowledged but overshadowed by Ryan's more prestigious achievements. The pattern was becoming clear. No matter what I accomplished, it would be viewed as less significant than Ryan's academic and leadership successes. The disparity in recognition extended beyond immediate family to our broader social circle. Ryan's achievements were discussed at neighborhood gatherings, shared with church congregations, and celebrated at extended family events. His success became a source of pride for my parents in their social interactions, providing them with impressive updates to share when friends and acquaintances inquired about their children's progress. My accomplishments were mentioned briefly, if at all, during these social exchanges. When neighbors or family friends asked about both children, my parents would spend considerable time detailing Ryan's latest achievements before offering a quick summary of my activities. The implicit message was that Ryan's success was worthy of extended discussion, while my achievements served primarily as evidence that both children were doing well, rather than as accomplishments deserving individual recognition. The academic expectations placed on each of us reflected these different levels of investment and attention. Ryan was expected to excel in all subjects, pursue advanced coursework, and position himself for admission to prestigious universities. His grades were monitored closely, with poor performance in any subject leading to immediate intervention through tutoring, teacher conferences, and adjusted study schedules. My academic performance was expected to be adequate but not exceptional. As long as I maintained passing grades and stayed out of trouble, my parents considered my educational progress satisfactory. When I excelled in business-related subjects or demonstrated particular aptitude for practical applications, these strengths were noted but not nurtured with the same intensity devoted to Ryan's academic development. The extracurricular activities encouraged for each of us also differed significantly. Ryan was pushed toward activities that would enhance his college applications and demonstrate leadership potential: debate team, academic competitions, volunteer organizations, and leadership camps. These activities required significant time investments and often involved travel or additional expenses, but my parents viewed them as necessary investments in Ryan's future success. My interests in business-related activities were tolerated, but not actively supported. When I expressed interest in joining the Junior Entrepreneurship Club or participating in business simulation competitions, my parents agreed, but without the enthusiasm they showed for Ryan's academic pursuits. They attended my events when possible, but didn't prioritize them over other family obligations the way they did for Ryan's activities. The financial investments made in our respective development told the story most clearly. Ryan received private tutoring when needed, test preparation courses for standardized exams, and educational enrichment opportunities during summers. My parents viewed these expenses as necessary investments in his future success, understanding that short-term costs would yield long-term benefits through improved college prospects and career opportunities. While I received the basics necessary for adequate educational progress, the additional investments were limited. When I requested books about business or entrepreneurship, my parents purchased them, but without the same sense of importance they attached to Ryan's academic materials. When I asked about attending business camps or entrepreneurship workshops, the responses were lukewarm, focusing on cost considerations rather than potential benefits. The summer job experiences offered to each of us reflected these different expectations and investments. Ryan was encouraged to pursue internships and volunteer positions that would enhance his resume and provide exposure to professional environments. These opportunities often involved family connections or networking through my parents' professional relationships, demonstrating their commitment to facilitating his career development. My summer employment options were more practical and immediate. My parents supported my decision to work at Burger Palace because it would teach me responsibility and work ethic, but they didn't view it as a stepping stone to future career advancement. The job was seen as character building rather than professional development, a temporary responsibility that would help me appreciate the value of education rather than a foundation for business understanding. High school crystallized the family dynamics that had been developing throughout my childhood, transforming subtle preferences into obvious disparities that became impossible to ignore. Ryan's senior year coincided with my freshman year, creating a direct comparison that highlighted our different trajectories within the family hierarchy. While he was being recruited by prestigious universities and accumulating scholarship offers, I was struggling to find my place in the complex social ecosystem of high school, while maintaining my part-time job at Burger Palace. The college application process for Ryan became a family obsession that consumed months of planning, preparation, and emotional investment. My parents treated his applications like a military campaign, with detailed strategies for highlighting his strengths, extensive research into admission requirements, and careful cultivation of relationships with guidance counselors and recommendation letter writers. Weekend family activities revolved around visiting college campuses, attending information sessions, and meeting with admissions representatives. During this same period, My academic performance and extracurricular involvement were monitored with benign neglect rather than active investment. My parents checked my grades periodically to ensure I wasn't failing any classes, but they didn't scrutinize my progress or push for excellence the way they did with Ryan. When I expressed interest in business-related electives or entrepreneurship programs, these choices were approved without enthusiasm or opposition. The scholarship awards and college acceptances that arrived for Ryan during his senior year triggered celebrations that became legendary in our household. Each acceptance letter was treated like a personal victory for the entire family, with phone calls to relatives, special dinners, and detailed discussions about the merits of different institutions. My parents researched faculty members, program rankings, and career placement statistics for every school that accepted Ryan, approaching his college decision with the thoroughness of professional consultants. When my own high school achievements occurred, they were acknowledged but not celebrated with the same intensity. My selection for the Business Academy program, recognition for academic improvement, and promotion to shift supervisor at Burger Palace received polite congratulations and brief family dinner announcements. These accomplishments were viewed as adequate progress rather than significant milestones worthy of major celebration or extended discussion. The financial planning for Ryan's college education revealed the extent of my parents' investment in his future success. They had been saving for his education since elementary school, researching investment strategies and education savings plans to maximize their ability to support his academic goals. Conversations about college costs, student loan options, and post-graduation financial planning occupied hours of family discussion time. My own educational financing was addressed with significantly less detail and urgency. My parents assumed I would attend community college or a local state university, both of which would be affordable without extensive financial planning or sacrifice. When I mentioned interest in business programs at more expensive institutions, these conversations were brief and focused on practical limitations rather than creative solutions or long-term investment strategies. The summer before Ryan's departure for college marked a turning point in how family resources and attention were allocated. My parents dedicated tremendous time and energy to preparing him for this major life transition, shopping for dormitory supplies, researching campus resources, and discussing strategies for academic and social success. The entire summer felt like an extended preparation period for Ryan's college launch, with other family activities subordinated to this overriding priority. Meanwhile, my own preparations for sophomore year and increased responsibilities at work received minimal family attention. My promotion to shift supervisor came with additional training requirements and expanded duties that required significant time and energy. But these developments were treated as routine rather than meaningful progress. The skills I was developing in leadership, conflict resolution, and operational management weren't recognized as valuable preparation for future success. Ryan's departure for college created a temporary vacuum in family attention that might have provided space for greater focus on my development and achievements. However, instead of redirecting their investment toward my progress, my parents channeled their energy into maintaining connection with Ryan through frequent phone calls, care packages, and visits. His college experiences became the primary source of family excitement and pride, with his academic performance, social integration, and extracurricular involvement providing constant topics for discussion and celebration. The stark contrast between Ryan's college experience and my continued high school attendance reinforced the perception that our lives were moving in fundamentally different directions. His updates about professors, research opportunities, and internship prospects were received with intense interest and pride, while my reports about work responsibilities, academic performance, and future planning received polite acknowledgement but limited engagement. During Ryan's winter break freshman year, his college stories dominated family gatherings and conversations. He had established himself academically, developed meaningful relationships with professors, and secured a competitive summer internship through campus recruiting. My parents hung on every detail of his college experience, asking extensive questions about his coursework, social activities, and career preparation activities. My own academic progress during his absence had been substantial, including improved grades, leadership roles in business-related clubs, and recognition from teachers for my practical understanding of economic concepts. However, these achievements seemed insignificant compared to Ryan's university-level accomplishments, and the sophisticated opportunities available to him through his college environment. The summer internship Ryan secured between his freshman and sophomore years represented another milestone that highlighted our different trajectories. His position at a regional consulting firm provided exposure to professional business environments, networking opportunities with industry leaders, and practical experience with strategic planning and client relations. My parents treated this internship like a major achievement, celebrating his selection and supporting his success with new professional wardrobe purchases and networking guidance. During that same summer, my continued employment at Burger Palace was becoming increasingly sophisticated as I took on additional management responsibilities and learned advanced operational concepts. However, my family viewed this work as more of the same, rather than meaningful professional development. The fact that I was earning more money and gaining valuable business experience was acknowledged but not celebrated or recognized as comparable to Ryan's internship achievements. The beginning of my junior year coincided with Ryan's increasing involvement in prestigious university programs and leadership opportunities. His academic performance had earned him recognition from professors, invitation to exclusive seminars, and consideration for competitive graduate school preparation programs. These achievements provided endless material for family conversations and social updates, reinforcing his position as the family's primary source of pride and accomplishment. My own junior year brought significant responsibilities at work, including training new employees, managing inventory systems, and participating in operational decision-making that affected restaurant profitability. These experiences were teaching me practical business skills that complemented my classroom learning in economics and business courses. However, my family continued to view my work primarily as a way to earn spending money rather than as serious preparation for future career success. The college planning conversations that began during my junior year revealed the different expectations my parents held for my future compared to the investment they had made in Ryan's educational trajectory. While Ryan's college experience was being carefully optimized for maximum career advancement potential, my post-high school planning was approached with practical limitations and modest expectations. When I expressed interest in attending universities with strong business programs, these conversations were brief and focused on financial constraints rather than potential benefits. My parents were willing to support reasonable educational goals, but not with the same level of sacrifice and strategic planning they had devoted to Ryan's academic success. The implicit message was that my future achievements would be limited by practical considerations, rather than driven by ambitious goals and family investment. The contrast became even more apparent during senior year college visits, which were perfunctory compared to the extensive research and campus exploration that had characterized Ryan's application process. My parents approached my college decisions with resignation rather than excitement, viewing the choice as selecting adequate options rather than pursuing optimal opportunities for future success. The turning point came during the spring of my senior year of high school, though I didn't recognize it as such at the time. Ryan was completing his sophomore year at UC Davis with impressive academic performance and growing professional connections, while I was managing increasingly complex responsibilities at Burger Palace and maintaining solid grades despite working 25 hours per week. The juxtaposition of our situations had become so routine that I had stopped expecting equal recognition or investment from my family. The incident that crystallized my resolve occurred during a family dinner in April, when Ryan was home for spring break and full of stories about his latest internship applications and networking successes. He had just been accepted into an exclusive business leadership program that would provide mentorship from industry executives and guarantee interviews with top-tier consulting firms. My parents were ecstatic, treating this acceptance as validation of their investment in his education and proof of his exceptional potential. During the same conversation, I mentioned that Mr. Peterson had asked me to take on additional management responsibilities during the busy summer season, including training new supervisors and helping develop operational improvements for the restaurant. This opportunity represented significant professional growth and demonstrated Mr. Peterson's confidence in my leadership abilities and business acumen. Ryan listened to my update with obvious amusement, then laughed and said, "David thinks managing a burger joint is going to prepare him for the real business world. Wait until you see how actual companies operate." My parents smiled at his comment, And my mother added, "It's good that you're learning responsibility, but you should start thinking about your real career plans after high school." The dismissive tone of their response hit me differently than previous instances of being overlooked. Perhaps it was the timing, occurring during a period when my work responsibilities were becoming genuinely sophisticated. Or perhaps it was the accumulation of years of similar dismissals reaching a critical mass. Whatever the reason, I felt a surge of determination that was qualitatively different from anything I had experienced before. That night, lying in bed and replaying the dinner conversation, I made a decision that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of my life. Instead of continuing to seek recognition for my achievements within a family system that couldn't value them, I would build something so significant that recognition would become irrelevant. If my family couldn't see potential in restaurant management, I would demonstrate that their understanding of business success was fundamentally limited. The decision wasn't driven by anger or resentment, but by a clear-eyed recognition that my path to success would necessarily be different from Ryan's, and that waiting for family validation would only limit my progress. I had already learned more about practical business operations than most business school graduates, and I was in a position to leverage that knowledge in ways my family couldn't imagine. The first step was committing fully to my relationship with Mr. Peterson and the opportunities he was offering. Instead of viewing my restaurant work as a temporary job that would end after high school graduation, I began approaching it as the foundation of a career that could surpass anything Ryan might achieve through traditional corporate advancement. This mental shift changed everything about how I approached my responsibilities and planned for my future. During the summer after graduation, while Ryan was completing his prestigious internship and my parents worried about my college plans, I was learning advanced franchise operations from Mr. Peterson and developing skills that would prove invaluable for business ownership. The timing was perfect because Mr. Peterson was beginning to consider retirement options and was impressed enough with my performance to discuss future opportunities that went far beyond typical employee advancement. The conversation that changed my life occurred on a quiet Tuesday evening in late July, when Mr. Peterson and I were reviewing weekly performance reports and discussing operational improvements for the upcoming school year. He had been mentioning his retirement plans more frequently, and I had been thinking about ways to leverage my restaurant experience into long-term career opportunities. "David," he said, looking up from the financial reports, "you understand this business better than most people twice your age. Have you ever thought about ownership?" The question hung in the air between us, representing possibilities I had imagined but never seriously considered within reach. The conversation that followed lasted until well past midnight, covering franchise requirements, financing options, operational responsibilities, and growth potential. Mr. Peterson explained that corporate headquarters was actively seeking qualified franchisees, particularly younger operators who could bring energy and innovation to established systems. My age, which might have been a disadvantage in other contexts, could actually be an asset in the franchise world. Over the following weeks, we developed a preliminary plan for franchise ownership that seemed ambitious but achievable. My savings from 3 years of work, combined with a modest inheritance from my grandmother and potential financing options, could provide enough capital for a down payment. My operational experience and demonstrated performance would satisfy corporate requirements for management capability. Most importantly, Mr. Peterson was willing to support my application and provide mentorship during the transition period. The decision to pursue franchise ownership rather than traditional college immediately created a new dynamic within my family. When I announced my intention to delay college enrollment and explore business ownership opportunities, my parents' reaction was predictably negative. They viewed this decision as evidence of misguided priorities and lack of understanding about how real success was achieved. Ryan's response was particularly dismissive, combining concern about my judgment with amusement at what he saw as naive business fantasies. "Restaurant ownership is incredibly risky," he explained with the authority of someone who had taken introductory business courses. "Most small businesses fail within 5 years, and franchise operations have huge overhead costs and limited profit margins. You'd be much better off getting a degree first and then considering business opportunities." The irony of receiving business advice from someone whose practical experience was limited to summer internships wasn't lost on me, but I recognized that arguing would be futile. Instead, I focused on developing my business plan, researching franchise requirements, and preparing for the application process. If my family couldn't support my decision, they would at least witness its results. The application process for franchise ownership was more rigorous than I had anticipated, requiring detailed financial documentation, comprehensive business plans, and extensive interviews with corporate representatives. However, my operational experience and Mr. Peterson's endorsement carried significant weight with decision-makers who valued practical knowledge over theoretical education. The months between submitting my application and receiving approval were filled with uncertainty and family tension. My parents continued to pressure me to reconsider college enrollment, viewing each passing week as evidence of poor decision-making that would have long-term negative consequences. Their anxiety was understandable, but also reinforced my determination to succeed independently of their support or approval. When the franchise approval came through in December, it represented validation that my unconventional path was not only viable but potentially more promising than traditional educational routes. At 19 years old, I was about to become a business owner with immediate responsibility for operations, finances, and strategic planning that would challenge me in ways no classroom ever could. The transition period with Mr. Peterson provided invaluable preparation for full ownership responsibilities. He shared insights about customer relationship management, supplier negotiations, staff development, and financial optimization that represented decades of accumulated business wisdom. More importantly, he helped me understand that successful franchise ownership required combining systematic operational excellence with innovative approaches to local market development. My family's reaction to my actual franchise purchase was complex, combining surprise, concern, and reluctant admiration. They hadn't expected my application to succeed, viewing the process as an expensive learning experience that would ultimately convince me to pursue more traditional paths. When faced with the reality of my business ownership, they struggled to reconcile their assumptions about my capabilities with the evidence of my achievement. Ryan's response was particularly interesting, reflecting his own uncertainty about how to evaluate my success within his framework for understanding business achievement. His initial skepticism gave way to curiosity about franchise operations and profitability, though he maintained that restaurant ownership was less prestigious than corporate employment and offered limited growth potential. The early months of franchise ownership confirmed both the challenges and opportunities that Mr. Peterson had described. The learning curve was steep, requiring mastery of multiple business functions simultaneously, while maintaining operational excellence and customer satisfaction. However, the financial performance exceeded projections, and my operational improvements were generating positive attention from corporate headquarters. More importantly, the experience was providing practical business education that was far more comprehensive and immediately applicable than anything available through traditional academic programs. Every decision had real consequences, every strategy required implementation and measurement, and every day brought new challenges that demanded creative problem-solving and leadership skills. As my first year of ownership progressed, and the restaurant's performance continued to improve, I began to understand that my unconventional path was not just viable but potentially superior to traditional routes to business success. While Ryan was learning business theory and preparing for entry-level corporate positions, I was developing practical expertise and building equity in a profitable enterprise. The recognition of this reality marked the completion of my transformation from a family disappointment seeking approval to an independent entrepreneur focused on measurable results rather than external validation. My success was becoming its own reward, and my family's opinions were becoming less relevant to my sense of accomplishment and self-worth. The reality of franchise ownership hit me like a freight train during my first week as the sole operator of Burger Palace Location 247. Despite months of preparation and Mr. Peterson's thorough training, nothing had adequately prepared me for the overwhelming responsibility of managing every aspect of a business while maintaining the operational standards that customers expected. The transition from employee to owner required a complete mental shift that challenged everything I thought I understood about restaurant operations. My first crisis came on a Thursday morning, when our primary supplier failed to deliver the weekly produce order due to a logistics error on their end. I arrived at 5:30 in the morning to prep for the breakfast rush, only to discover we had no lettuce, tomatoes, or onions for the day's service. The previous David would have called Mr. Peterson for guidance. The new owner, David, had to solve this problem independently while keeping the restaurant operational. I spent the next 2 hours driving to 3 different wholesale suppliers across Riverside County, negotiating emergency purchases and learning hard lessons about backup vendor relationships and inventory contingency planning. By the time we opened at 7, I was exhausted, stressed, and behind schedule, but we had the ingredients necessary to serve our full menu. That evening, I implemented new supplier protocols and backup systems that would prevent similar crises in the future. The staffing challenges proved even more complex than supply chain issues. As an employee, I had worked alongside my colleagues as part of a team managed by Mr. Peterson's steady leadership. As the owner, I suddenly found myself responsible for scheduling, training, discipline, and motivation of 15 employees who ranged in age from 16 to 55. Some staff members struggled to accept direction from someone they had previously viewed as a peer, while others tested boundaries to see how much they could get away with under new management. The most difficult personnel situation involved Maria Gonzalez, a veteran employee who had worked at the location for 8 years and clearly resented taking orders from someone young enough to be her son. She had been hoping for a promotion to assistant manager when Mr. Peterson retired, and my ownership represented a fundamental disruption to her career expectations. Her passive resistance took the form of subtle insubordination, missed shifts without adequate notice, and negative comments to other staff members about my qualifications and experience. Addressing Maria's behavior required diplomacy and firmness that challenged my conflict resolution skills. I couldn't simply fire an experienced employee during my transition period, but I also couldn't allow her attitude to undermine my authority or poison the workplace culture. After several unsuccessful attempts at informal correction, I scheduled a formal meeting where we discussed her concerns, my expectations, and the mutual respect necessary for productive working relationships. The conversation with Maria became a turning point in my development as a leader and business owner. She expressed legitimate concerns about job security and advancement opportunities under new ownership, while also acknowledging that her behavior had been unprofessional and counterproductive. We developed a plan for her increased responsibilities and compensation that addressed her career goals, while establishing clear boundaries for appropriate workplace conduct. The financial pressures of ownership were equally challenging and educational. As an employee, I had understood restaurant operations from a labor perspective, focusing on customer service, food preparation, and shift management. As an owner, I had to master profit and loss analysis, cash flow management, tax obligations, and strategic investment decisions that affected every aspect of the business. The monthly franchise fees, equipment maintenance costs, insurance premiums, and loan payments created fixed expenses that had to be covered regardless of daily sales fluctuations. During slower periods, I could see exactly how each transaction affected our bottom line, and how operational efficiency directly impacted profitability. This real-time financial education was more valuable than any accounting course could have provided. My first major equipment failure occurred during the lunch rush on a busy Friday when our primary fryer malfunctioned, filling the kitchen with smoke and forcing us to shut down hot food preparation. The repair technician couldn't arrive until Monday, leaving me with the choice of closing for the weekend or finding creative solutions to serve customers with limited cooking capabilities. I opted to maintain operations using backup equipment and modified menu options, but the experience taught me expensive lessons about preventive maintenance and equipment replacement planning. The customer service challenges of ownership were particularly enlightening because I was now personally responsible for every aspect of the customer experience. Complaints that I had previously addressed as an employee following company policies now required me to make judgment calls about refunds, compensation, and service recovery that balanced customer satisfaction with business profitability. One memorable incident involved a family whose order was significantly delayed due to a communication error between kitchen staff and front counter employees. The delay ruined their plans for a movie that evening, and they demanded not only a full refund but additional compensation for their inconvenience. As an employee, I would have followed standard protocols and called a manager. As the owner, I had to decide how much our reputation was worth and what level of service recovery was appropriate. I ended up providing the full refund plus complimentary meal vouchers for their next visit, a decision that cost us nearly $60 but demonstrated our commitment to customer satisfaction. More importantly, the family became regular customers who often brought friends and family members, generating far more revenue than my initial investment in service recovery. These experiences taught me that ownership required long-term thinking about customer relationships rather than short-term focus on individual transaction profitability. The isolation of ownership was something I hadn't anticipated but found particularly challenging during difficult periods. As an employee, problems were shared responsibilities that could be discussed with colleagues and managers who understood the operational context. As the owner, most decisions were mine alone, and the weight of responsibility for 15 employees' livelihoods and hundreds of customers' satisfaction created pressure that I had never experienced. My parents' reaction to my early ownership struggles reinforced their skepticism about my decision to forego college for business ownership. When I shared stories about equipment failures, staffing challenges, or customer complaints, they viewed these difficulties as evidence that I had taken on responsibilities beyond my capabilities. Their advice typically focused on damage control and exit strategies rather than problem-solving and business development. Ryan's response to my ownership challenges was particularly frustrating because he approached my situation with theoretical knowledge that had limited practical application. He would offer advice about management theories, organizational behavior principles, and financial planning strategies that sounded sophisticated but didn't address the immediate operational realities I was facing. His suggestions were well-intentioned, but revealed the gap between academic business education and actual business experience. The learning curve during my first 6 months of ownership was steeper than anything I had experienced in school or as an employee. Every day brought new challenges that required quick decision-making, creative problem-solving, and leadership skills that I was developing through trial and error. The mistakes were costly and sometimes embarrassing, but they provided education that was immediately applicable and permanently memorable. The vendor relationship management required particular attention because my success depended on reliable partnerships with suppliers, maintenance contractors, and service providers who could support consistent operations. I had to learn negotiation skills, contract evaluation, and vendor performance assessment while maintaining the positive relationships that Mr. Peterson had established over many years. My first major vendor negotiation involved our primary food supplier, whose contract was up for renewal 6 months after I took ownership. The company's initial proposal included price increases that would have significantly impacted our profit margins, and their representative clearly viewed me as an inexperienced owner who could be pressured into accepting unfavorable terms. The negotiation required research into alternative suppliers, detailed cost analysis, and strategic planning that challenged my business skills in new ways. The successful renegotiation of that contract, which resulted in better pricing and improved service terms, marked an important milestone in my development as a business owner. I had demonstrated that my youth didn't necessarily translate to naivete, and that thorough preparation could overcome experience disadvantages. More importantly, I had established credibility with a key supplier that would benefit our operations for years to come. The marketing and promotion aspects of ownership required skills that I hadn't developed as an employee, but were essential for long-term success. Mr. Peterson had relied primarily on location traffic and repeat customers, but I recognized opportunities to expand our customer base through targeted promotions, community involvement, and customer loyalty programs. My first marketing initiative involved partnering with nearby businesses to offer cross-promotional discounts that would drive traffic during slower periods. The program required coordination with multiple business owners, development of promotional materials, and tracking systems to measure effectiveness. The results exceeded expectations, generating new customer traffic and establishing relationships with neighboring businesses that would provide ongoing marketing opportunities. The seasonal fluctuations in restaurant business became apparent during my first summer as owner, when changes in local demographics and activity patterns significantly affected our sales volumes. The area around our location included several schools and offices that generated consistent traffic during the academic year and business week, but created dead periods during summer months and weekends. Adapting to these fluctuations required flexible staffing strategies, adjusted operating hours, and targeted promotions that could maintain profitability during slower periods. I learned to analyze sales patterns, predict traffic volumes, and adjust operations accordingly while maintaining service quality and employee morale. These skills would prove invaluable as I expanded to multiple locations with different customer demographics and traffic patterns. The regulatory compliance aspects of restaurant ownership introduced me to a complex web of health department requirements, labor law obligations, and business licensing procedures that I had never encountered as an employee. The responsibility for maintaining compliance across multiple regulatory domains required attention to detail and systematic record-keeping that challenged my organizational skills. My first health department inspection as an owner was particularly nerve-wracking because I was personally responsible for any violations or compliance issues. I spent weeks preparing for the inspection, reviewing all procedures, updating documentation, and ensuring that every aspect of our operations met regulatory standards. The successful completion of that inspection, with 0 violations, marked an important milestone in my confidence as a business owner. By the end of my first year as a franchise owner, the operational challenges that had initially seemed overwhelming were becoming manageable routines that I could handle, with increasing confidence and efficiency. The restaurant was not only meeting the performance standards established under Mr. Peterson's ownership, but exceeding them in several key metrics, including customer satisfaction scores, employee retention rates, and monthly profit margins. More importantly, I was beginning to understand the scalable systems and processes that would enable expansion to multiple locations. The financial performance improvements were particularly gratifying because they represented concrete validation of my management decisions and operational innovations. During my second quarter as owner, we achieved the highest monthly sales figures in the location's 15-year history, surpassing previous records by 12%, through a combination of improved customer service, streamlined operations, and targeted marketing initiatives. The customer satisfaction surveys that corporate headquarters conducted quarterly showed marked improvements in service speed, food quality, and overall experience ratings. These improvements weren't accidental, but resulted from systematic analysis of customer feedback, employee training programs, and operational adjustments that addressed specific areas for improvement. I was learning to use data-driven decision-making to optimize every aspect of the business. My relationship with corporate headquarters was evolving from standard franchisee oversight to recognition as an emerging leader within the franchise system. The regional manager, Patricia Williams, began including me in discussions about best practices, operational innovations, and expansion strategies that were typically reserved for more experienced multi-unit operators. Her mentorship provided insights into the broader franchise system and opportunities for growth that I hadn't previously considered. The employee retention and satisfaction improvements at my location were generating positive attention throughout the regional franchise network. While many locations struggled with high turnover and training costs, my restaurant had achieved stability and team cohesion that translated directly into better customer service and operational efficiency. The key was developing management practices that balanced high-performance expectations with genuine respect for employee contributions and growth opportunities. Maria Gonzalez, who had initially resisted my ownership, had become one of my most valuable employees and strongest supporters within the team. Her experience and institutional knowledge, combined with increased responsibilities and compensation, created a partnership that benefited both her career development and our operational effectiveness. Her transformation from skeptic to advocate demonstrated the importance of addressing employee concerns constructively rather than defensively. The operational innovations I implemented during my first year were being recognized by other franchise owners and corporate representatives as models for system-wide adoption. My approach to inventory management, staff scheduling, and customer service recovery had generated measurable improvements that caught the attention of district supervisors and regional trainers. One particularly successful innovation involved restructuring our shift schedules to better align staffing levels with customer traffic patterns throughout the day. By analyzing point-of-sale data and customer flow metrics, I identified opportunities to reduce labor costs during slower periods while improving service during peak hours. The resulting schedule optimization improved both profitability and employee satisfaction by providing more predictable hours and better work-life balance. The marketing initiatives I had launched were generating sustained increases in customer traffic and average transaction values. The cross-promotional partnerships with neighboring businesses had evolved into a formal merchant association that coordinated joint marketing efforts and community events. My role in organizing these collaborative efforts had established my reputation as a business leader within the local commercial district. The customer loyalty program I developed had exceeded participation projections and was driving measurable increases in repeat business and customer lifetime value. The program combined digital tracking technology with personalized rewards that encouraged frequent visits and higher spending per transaction. Corporate headquarters was considering my loyalty program model for system-wide implementation, which would provide additional revenue through licensing fees. My first expansion opportunity came sooner than I had anticipated when a franchise location in nearby San Bernardino became available due to the owner's retirement. The location had been underperforming for several years due to inconsistent management and deferred maintenance, but it was situated in a high-traffic area with strong demographic fundamentals. Patricia Williams approached me about the acquisition opportunity, suggesting that my operational skills and innovative approaches could transform the struggling location into a profitable operation. The financial analysis of the San Bernardino location required skills I had developed through managing my first restaurant, but applied to a more complex situation involving distressed asset evaluation, renovation planning, and market penetration strategies. The location would require significant capital investment for equipment upgrades and facility improvements, but the potential returns justified the risk if I could successfully implement my operational systems. The acquisition process introduced me to advanced business concepts, including asset valuation, financing structures, and due diligence procedures that challenged my analytical capabilities. I spent weeks reviewing financial records, conducting market research, and developing business plans that demonstrated the location's profit potential under improved management. The loan application for the second location required comprehensive documentation of my first restaurant's performance, detailed projections for the new location's potential, and personal guarantees that increased my financial exposure significantly. The process was more complex than my initial franchise financing, but my track record of success and corporate headquarters endorsement provided credibility with lenders. The approval of financing for my second location marked a significant milestone in my evolution from single-unit operator to multi-unit franchise owner. The additional complexity of managing two locations simultaneously would require new systems for oversight, communication, and performance monitoring that would test my leadership and organizational capabilities. The renovation and reopening of the San Bernardino location provided practical education in project management, contractor coordination, and grand opening marketing that complemented my operational expertise. The 3-month renovation timeline required careful coordination of multiple contractors, while maintaining progress toward reopening deadlines and budget constraints. The hiring and training process for the new location allowed me to implement refined versions of the employee development programs I had perfected at my original restaurant. The staff selection criteria, training curricula, and performance management systems reflected lessons learned from my first year of ownership and represented significant improvements over standard franchise training protocols. The grand reopening event for the renovated San Bernardino location generated community excitement and media attention that exceeded our marketing projections. The event attracted over 400 customers during the first weekend, generating sales volumes that surpassed our optimistic projections and established strong momentum for ongoing operations. The management systems I developed for overseeing two locations simultaneously required technological solutions and delegation strategies that prepared me for continued expansion. I implemented point-of-sale integration, remote monitoring capabilities, and standardized reporting procedures that allowed me to maintain operational oversight without being physically present at both locations constantly. The financial performance of both locations during my second year of ownership validated my expansion strategy and demonstrated the scalability of my operational innovations. The combined profit from both restaurants exceeded my projections and provided capital for continued growth while establishing my reputation within the franchise system as a successful multi-unit operator. The recognition from corporate headquarters culminated in an invitation to speak at the annual franchise conference about multi-unit growth strategies and operational excellence. The presentation opportunity would provide exposure to hundreds of franchise owners and corporate executives while positioning me as a thought leader within the system. My family's reaction to my expanding business success was complex and somewhat uncomfortable. They couldn't ignore the financial results and professional recognition I was achieving, but they struggled to reconcile my success with their assumptions about the limitations of restaurant ownership. Their responses ranged from grudging admiration to persistent suggestions that I should consider transitioning to more traditional business opportunities. Ryan's reaction was particularly interesting because his corporate career was progressing well but not spectacularly. His promotions and salary increases were steady and respectable, but they paled in comparison to the financial growth and professional recognition I was achieving through franchise ownership. His advice about my business decisions became less frequent and more tentative, as my success became undeniable. The invitations to participate in business development programs, industry conferences, and professional organizations were expanding my network beyond the franchise system into broader business and entrepreneurial communities. These connections provided access to resources, mentorship, and opportunities that would support continued growth and diversification. Living two completely different lives required organizational skills and emotional compartmentalization that I never expected to develop. My professional identity as a successful multi-unit franchise owner existed in a completely separate universe from my family identity as the son who was still working in restaurants and needed to quote his future more seriously. The cognitive dissonance was exhausting but also strangely liberating because it allowed me to build success without the pressure of family expectations or the fear of family disappointment. The practical aspects of maintaining this dual existence required careful attention to details that most people never have to consider. I drove my modest Honda Civic to family events while keeping my BMW X5 parked at my business office downtown. I lived in a small apartment near my parents' house while using my Corona Del Mar property as a business retreat and investment asset. I dressed in work uniforms during family visits while maintaining professional wardrobes for industry conferences and business meetings. The financial complexity of this arrangement was particularly challenging because I needed to maintain the appearance of modest income while managing significant business revenues and investment portfolios. I used separate banking relationships for personal and business accounts, maintained minimal visible assets at my family residence, and carefully controlled my spending patterns during family interactions to avoid raising questions about my actual financial situation. The technology management required constant vigilance to prevent accidental exposure of my business success during family interactions. I used different phone numbers for business and personal communications, maintained separate social media profiles for professional and family connections, and carefully managed my online presence to avoid search results that might reveal my actual accomplishments. The most challenging aspect was managing conversations about my work and future plans during family gatherings. I had become skilled at providing vague responses to questions about my job responsibilities, deflecting inquiries about my income and benefits, and redirecting conversations toward other family members' achievements. These interactions required improvisation and emotional control that was often more exhausting than managing my actual business operations. My relationship with my college friend Tyler Jackson became crucial during this period because he was one of the few people who knew the complete truth about my situation. Tyler worked in marketing for a technology company and understood both professional success and family dynamics. His perspective provided emotional support and practical advice about managing the stress of living such compartmentalized lives. Tyler often marveled at my ability to maintain such different personas across different contexts. During our regular coffee meetings, I could discuss business strategies, expansion plans, and industry developments with someone who understood the complexity and significance of my achievements. These conversations provided intellectual stimulation and emotional validation that I couldn't find within my family relationships. The dating challenges created by my dual existence were particularly complex because potential romantic partners had to be introduced to either my family identity or my professional identity, but rarely both. Women I met through business networks expected a successful entrepreneur with ambitious goals and sophisticated lifestyle preferences. Women I met through family connections expected someone who was still figuring things out and had modest career prospects. My relationship with Sarah Chen, whom I met at a franchise industry conference, became serious despite the complications created by my family situation. Sarah was a marketing consultant who worked with restaurant chains, and she understood the business from both operational and strategic perspectives. Her professional background made her appreciate my achievements and growth potential, But it also made family interactions awkward when my parents asked about her work and couldn't understand why someone with her credentials would be interested in their directionless son. The holiday seasons were particularly stressful because they concentrated family interactions while coinciding with peak business periods that required significant professional attention. Thanksgiving and Christmas involved extended family gatherings where my apparent lack of progress was frequently discussed, while simultaneously demanding intensive management of restaurant operations during our busiest sales periods. The extended family dynamics added another layer of complexity to my situation, because cousins, aunts, and uncles had their own opinions about my career choices and future prospects. Their well-intentioned advice typically focused on returning to school, finding, quote, stable employment, or leveraging family connections to secure, quote, better opportunities. These conversations required diplomatic responses that acknowledged their concern while protecting my actual circumstances from discovery. My cousin Jennifer, who worked as a teacher and had always been close to our family, was particularly persistent in her attempts to help me get back on track after college. She frequently sent job postings, graduate school information, and networking opportunities that she thought might interest someone in my situation. Her efforts were genuinely caring, but based on completely incorrect assumptions about my needs and goals. The social events within my professional network required careful coordination to avoid conflicts with family obligations while maintaining important business relationships. Industry conferences, franchise owner meetings, and business development seminars were crucial for my continued success, but they often conflicted with family gatherings or required explanations about my whereabouts that I couldn't provide honestly. The awards and recognition ceremonies presented particular challenges because they celebrated achievements that I couldn't share with my family without revealing the extent of my business success. When I received the Young Entrepreneur of the Year award from the Regional Restaurant Association, I attended the ceremony alone, rather than inviting family members who would have been proud but confused by the recognition. The media attention that accompanied some of my business achievements required careful management to prevent family discovery. When the local business journal featured an article about successful young franchise owners, I had to request that they not include my photo or use my full name to avoid potential recognition by family members or their friends. The financial planning aspects of my dual existence required sophisticated strategies to manage significant income while maintaining the appearance of modest means. I worked with financial advisors who understood my unique situation and could help me optimize tax strategies, investment portfolios, and asset protection, while preserving my privacy and maintaining operational flexibility for continued business expansion. The insurance and legal considerations were more complex than typical business owners face, because I needed to protect my assets while maintaining separation between my professional and family identities. This required specialized legal counsel and insurance structures that could provide comprehensive protection without creating paper trails that might accidentally expose my situation during routine family interactions. The stress management required to maintain such different lives in parallel required developing coping strategies and support systems that could address the emotional toll of constant compartmentalization. I worked with a business coach who specialized in entrepreneurial challenges and understood the unique pressures faced by young business owners who lacked traditional family support for their achievements. The exercise routines, meditation practices, and hobby activities that I developed during this period were essential for maintaining mental health and emotional balance during a time when professional success was creating personal isolation. I found that physical fitness and creative outlets provided necessary release from the pressure of managing such complex and contradictory life circumstances. The professional development opportunities I pursued during this period were designed to expand my business skills, while providing peer relationships with other successful entrepreneurs who could understand my situation. Executive education programs, industry associations, and business networking groups provided intellectual challenge and social connection that complemented my business achievements. The mentorship relationships I developed with successful business owners outside the franchise system provided guidance about managing growth, personal development, and long-term strategic planning that extended beyond operational excellence. These relationships were particularly valuable because they offered perspectives from entrepreneurs who had navigated similar challenges and could provide advice about scaling businesses while maintaining personal well-being. As my business empire expanded beyond 10 locations and my annual revenue crossed the $2 million threshold, the irony of my family's continued dismissal became almost surreal. During my 26th birthday celebration at my parents' house, Ryan spent the entire evening discussing his recent promotion to senior manager and his company's expansion into new markets, while I quietly listened and occasionally deflected questions about when I might finally move on from restaurant work to pursue a real career. The conversation that evening was particularly painful because Ryan was earning approximately $80,000 annually in his corporate position, which my family considered a tremendous achievement worthy of extended celebration and pride. Meanwhile, I was generating over 4 times that amount in business profits while managing 23 locations across 3 counties, yet my family continued to view my situation as evidence of limited ambition and poor life choices. My mother had developed an increasingly pronounced habit of making apologetic explanations for my career situation during social interactions with neighbors, church members, and family friends. When people asked about her children, she would enthusiastically describe Ryan's corporate success and career advancement before offering embarrassed summaries of my temporary restaurant work and vague suggestions that I was still exploring different opportunities. The neighborhood barbecues and community events became exercises in family reputation management, where my mother would steer conversations away from career discussions when my situation came up and redirect attention toward Ryan's achievements or other family members' successes. Her obvious discomfort with my apparent lack of progress created an atmosphere where my presence felt like a source of family embarrassment rather than pride. My father's approach was more subtle but equally dismissive, focusing on gentle encouragement rather than open disappointment. He would privately suggest that I consider applying for management positions at larger restaurant chains, returning to school for business training, or exploring opportunities in growth industries that might offer better long-term prospects than independent restaurant work. His advice was always well-intentioned and based on genuine concern for my future financial security, but it revealed how completely he misunderstood my actual circumstances. When he worried about my retirement planning or health insurance benefits, I had to restrain myself from explaining that my investment portfolio and business equity were already providing more financial security than most people achieve in entire careers. The extended family dynamics during this period became increasingly uncomfortable, as cousins and relatives my age were achieving traditional milestones like homeownership, marriage, and professional advancement. Family gatherings included updates about Jennifer's teacher certification, Michael's law school graduation, and Patricia's accounting firm promotion. While my contributions to these conversations remained limited to vague references to staying busy with work. The wedding season that marked my mid-20s was particularly challenging because it concentrated family social interactions around celebrations of other people's achievements and life progress. During wedding receptions and related events, conversations naturally turned to career updates and future plans, creating situations where I had to navigate questions about my own prospects while maintaining enthusiasm for others' successes. Ryan's engagement to Ashley Chen added another dimension to family dynamics because it represented a major milestone that highlighted the different trajectories our lives had taken. Ashley was a successful marketing professional with an MBA from UC Berkeley, and her career accomplishments provided additional evidence of the type of success my family valued and respected. The engagement announcement dinner at my parents' house was a celebration of Ryan's personal and professional achievements, with extensive discussion of wedding plans, career prospects, and future goals. Ashley's questions about my work were polite, but revealed her surprise that someone Ryan's age would still be working in entry-level restaurant positions without apparent advancement or professional development. The wedding planning conversations that dominated family interactions for months provided constant reminders of the different expectations and investments my parents made in Ryan's success compared to their resigned acceptance of my apparent limitations. The financial contributions they offered for wedding expenses, honeymoon planning, and future home purchases reflected their confidence in Ryan's earning potential and their desire to support his continued advancement. The career advice they offered to Ashley about balancing professional ambitions with family planning contrasted sharply with their suggestions that I should focus on finding stable employment with good benefits, rather than pursuing ambitious goals. The implicit message was that Ryan and Ashley represented the family's successful next generation, while I remained a cautionary example of unfulfilled potential. My participation in wedding-related events required careful management of conversations about my own relationship status and career prospects. Well-meaning relatives and family friends would ask when I might follow Ryan's example by settling down and establishing myself professionally, questions that assumed my current situation was temporary and unsatisfactory. The bachelor party that Ryan's friends organized became an unexpected window into how my situation was perceived by his professional peer group. Several of his colleagues made polite but obviously curious inquiries about my work, clearly struggling to understand how two brothers from the same family could have such different career outcomes. The rehearsal dinner speeches and wedding toasts that celebrated Ryan's achievements and bright future created an emotional contrast with my own unrecognized accomplishments. Listening to family members praise his character, work ethic, and potential while knowing that my own business success exceeded his by orders of magnitude required emotional control that was increasingly difficult to maintain. The honeymoon period following Ryan's wedding brought temporary relief from family social events, but also introduced new dynamics as he and Ashley established themselves as the family's successful young couple. Their apartment in a trendy San Francisco neighborhood, their new car purchases, and their vacation plans provided ongoing topics for family pride and discussion. The holiday seasons during this period were particularly challenging because they concentrated extended family interactions while requiring me to maintain my facade of limited success during peak business periods. Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners included updates from relatives about their children's achievements, creating informal competitions where my contributions remained notably absent. The questions about my 5-year plans and long-term goals became more pointed as I approached my late 20s, without apparent progress toward traditional markers of adult success. Family members who had previously been patient with my exploration phase were beginning to express genuine concern about my future prospects and the need for more serious career planning. My mother's book club friends had children who were achieving graduate degrees, professional certifications, and corporate promotions that provided constant comparison points for measuring family success. Her increasing discomfort with these social situations was evident in her attempts to redirect conversations away from career discussions when my name came up. The community recognition that Ryan received for his professional achievements created additional pressure for family pride and social status. When his company promoted him to regional director, and he was featured in the local business section, my parents framed the article and shared it enthusiastically with neighbors and friends. The contrast between public celebration of Ryan's modest corporate success and complete ignorance of my significant business achievements created a cognitive dissonance that was becoming harder to ignore. Every family gathering reinforced the gap between perception and reality, while making the eventual revelation seem both more necessary and more potentially devastating for family relationships. The investment planning conversations that my parents began having during this period revealed their assumptions about my long-term financial prospects and their concerns about my ability to support myself independently. Their suggestions about modest saving strategies and basic financial planning reflected their belief that my income potential was severely limited by my career choices. The retirement planning discussions that included Ryan and Ashley but excluded me from serious consideration demonstrated how completely my family had written off my potential for significant financial achievement. While they discussed strategies for maximizing Ryan's corporate benefits and Ashley's career advancement, my financial future was viewed as a source of potential family concern rather than contribution. The real estate conversations that began as Ryan and Ashley considered home purchases provided another reminder of the different expectations my family held for our respective futures. While they researched neighborhoods, mortgage options, and investment potential for the successful couple, my housing situation was viewed as temporary and necessarily modest due to my limited earning potential. The final months before the revelation were marked by increasing family pressure for me to make significant changes in my career direction and life planning. The patience that had previously characterized their approach to my situation was being replaced by genuine anxiety about my future and growing pressure for dramatic course correction. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.